Well, hello friends. Welcome back to the channel and happy new year. Happy 2025. So today I'm going to be sharing with you a pattern that I made at the end of 2024. So although I made this in 2024, I want to share with you my thoughts and my impressions of the Vogue V1933. It is one of my favorite patterns of last year that I have sewn, and it's one of the reasons why I waited so late to share with you what I made for the Sew the Trends challenge. And this is my last make for the Sew the Trends challenge. So the challenge ended yesterday, and I want to share with you what I have made and the pattern that I have used, which is this pattern right here, the Vogue V1933. So let's first talk about the features of the pattern. So this is a shirt dress pattern that come in two different lengths. So you get in above the knee length variation and also a maxi length variation. And I want to say from the start of the video that the short variation as well as the maxi variation is more like a tunic style. So at the bottom of the hem, near the hem of the dress, you do have like an opening where there are no buttons. And so if you are wanting to have a true shirt dress where there are buttons that go all the way down the center front, you want to go into the pattern, making sure that you look at that front dress pattern piece so that you can see where you might need to place buttons that might be missing on the tunic, because it's really more of a tunic style than a dress. You do have a bit of a opening at the lower edge, and you will see like some your high thigh area if you're not careful. So you want to make sure that you go into the project, you know, assessing that situation and seeing where you want to put your buttons. So you do have this beautiful dress slash tunic. You have buttons going down the center of the dress. For the longer variation, I believe you have like somewhere between 10 and 14 buttons. And for the shorter variation, there are 9 buttons. I put an extra button on one of mine because I lengthened one of my variations, and I'll tell you more about that when I get to that portion of the video. You have a drop sleeve, and the shoulder of the sleeve is quite dropped. So that's something else you want to make sure that you pay attention to. You have two different cuffs. You have cuff B and cuff A. They are relatively the same, not too much of a difference, but you do have two different styles of cuffs. You do have button details on the cuff. What I like about the sleeve, you do have a concealed button closure, and you also have a button closure that's not concealed. And so you have the two options that you can do, but you don't have a continuous lap or anything like that. You do have pleats on the lower edge of the sleeve, so you want to keep that in mind as well. When you're assembling the cuff, I found that the cuff is quite big, and it's supposed to be like that. It's a statement cuff. So if you want a cuff that is actually form-fitting around your wrist, you might need to do some tweaking and some work to actually get it to be more of a form-fitting cuff. This is a loose style cuff, and it is designed that way. You do have a collar and a collar stand. And for the front of the garment, you don't have a button placket. You are just doing the self-facing method for the front, where you turn your front pieces over, your fabric over a couple of times so that you can get a self-facing on the front. So you are not putting any bands on. And I don't believe it calls for interfacing. I just went ahead and stabilized mine and put interfacing on anyway. But yeah, you do need interfacing for your collar and your collar stand, and also your cuff. You also have this, I think I mentioned the drop sleeve, and I think that's about it. As I mentioned in the beginning, you do have that slit in the front of your tunic slash dress. And so your dress kind of flares out a little bit at the thigh area down to your hem. So again, you might want to pay particular attention to that. This pattern is relatively easy for those individuals, I would say, who are in the later end of the advanced beginner stage as well as the intermediate stage. If you are familiar with sewing on collar bands and collars, as well as buttons and buttonholes and cuffs, this will be pretty easy for you. It calls for 9 pattern pieces, but I only use between 7 and 8. One of those pattern pieces is like a guide for your buttons. And I think there's 2 pattern pieces actually for a guide for your buttons. So for your sleeve as well as for the front of your garment. And so you're not sewing with those pieces. And so taking that into mind, you really are only sewing with about 6 to 7 pattern pieces, depending on what you are working with. Because like I said, I believe you have 2 cuffs as well. So it's relatively easy. I made 2 variations. The first variation that I made, and again, because I was participating in the Sew the Trends challenge, I'll share with you my inspiration pictures here, and also the not the website, but the style of the garment, as well as the maker or the designer of the garments that I tried to replicate. And I'll put that here so you can see what those look like. So the first variation, I believe, is a take of an Ann Taylor, and there's another designer. I'll just put those here because I cannot remember all the designers that I looked for to create this type of style, because I really loved this beautiful black and tan animal print here. And so I'll put that here. And so I was working with a rayon challis, and most of the variations that I looked at was also very similar in terms of fabric, the texture and the content. And so that was basically what I was trying to go with that first inspiration that I wanted to sew. As I mentioned before, I did a take on this beautiful animal print, and it's black and tan. I wanted to make a shirt dress. Some of the shirt dresses that I have seen are a little bit more form-fitting. Some have separate bodice and skirt pieces that you're sewing together. Others are a little bit more snatched in the waist. I just went with a looser silhouette because I absolutely love this Vogue pattern. I love the silhouette, and I love that it's loose fitting and you don't have to worry about doing any fitting with it. And so that's why I chose that one. For that variation, I chose a size 16, and that size 16 is a 46 inches for the bust, a 48 inch for the waist, and a 53 inch for the hip. And I will say that this pattern comes in 2 groups of sizes. You get the 6 to 16 and the 16 to 24. So I got the second group of sizes. I definitely could have gone down to the size 14. This pattern, I would not say that it's true to size. I think that it is meant to be a looser silhouette. And so you can definitely choose either a size up or a size down, depending on how loose or how form-fitting or how close-fitting you want your garment. And so I definitely could go down a size, but however you want to wear your garment, I'm telling you, you most likely can go up or down depending on what style you want. It's very friendly in terms of size and the sizes that you can choose from. So I really like that about the pattern. So for this variation, I chose the short variation, which is the above knee length. I wanted mine to come a little bit either at my knee or a little bit below my knee. And so I added an inch to that garment. But that's all I did. I just added that small little inch to the garment. And so you can see based on how I'm wearing it and based on how it's presented on the envelope. On the envelope, hers is a little bit higher. I think it's about 2 or 3 inches above the knee. Mine's fall either right at the knee or a little bit below the knee. And so that 1 inch did make it so that I could take it a little bit longer, but it's not the same size on me straight out of the envelope as it is on the model. And that is to be expected because I'm generally shorter than models. And so just keep that in mind as well. If you're short, you may have to shorten or lengthen your garment depending on what style you're going for there. I did talk a little bit about the buttons. So as I mentioned before, you have 9 buttons going down the center front for view A. If you're doing the longer variation, you have a few more buttons. For your sleeves, there are 14 buttons. So there's 7 buttons on each sleeve. If you're doing the cuff, that's 2 buttons, and then you have an additional 5 buttons that's on your sleeve. As I mentioned before, you can do either the conceal button closure, or you can do the just button closure where you actually see your buttons. And I decided to do the second variation because I wanted my buttons to be seen. So that was my first variation. The second variation was a take on another inspiration that I found. I think it was on Pinterest, and I'll put images here so you can see what the various looks look like and what I was going for. That second variation is also a zebra print, and it's black and white. And both of these pieces I purchased from Fabric Mart Fabrics about a year or 2 ago. And I had 4 yards of fabric for both of them. And for both of them, I have 1 yard left over. So it took me about 3 yards of fabric to complete both projects. And I still have a yard left over, and I'm going to make a simple 1 yard elasticated skirt with those so that I don't waste my fabric there. So I was really pleased that I was able to work this project in, and also have enough of a remnant left that I can actually use it for something else. The second variation, instead of shortening the skirt, I decided to leave it so it's a little bit shorter. The first variation, I wanted to mention this as well. As I mentioned before, I did the size 16, but I went in about an inch on each side. So if you calculate the front and the back, that's about, so that's for both sizes, about a little over 2 inches that I have gone in for both sides. So I want to go back and just say real quickly, for that first variation, the tan and black one, I did take it in just a little bit. So I took it in about 2 inches on each side. So I took a total about 4 inches. And so it's a little bit closer in silhouette than the one that I'm wearing, which is the black and white one. And so the black and white one, I left at the size 16. The only adjustments that I did to this one is I decided not to lengthen it. In terms of modifications and adjustments, the only modification and or adjustment that I have made was to the sleeve. So to the first one, I raised the sleeve about 3 to 4 inches because, as I mentioned before, the shoulder is very dropped. Very, very dropped. And then for this variation, I did more like 3.5 instead of 4. I think it was maybe 3 or 3.5 or something like that. So this one has a little bit more of a drop shoulder than the first one because I went back and recorrected it a little bit. And so that is the modification and adjustment that I did. For the first one, I also took my sleeve in a little bit because not the sleeve, I'm sorry, the cuff. I took the cuff in a little bit, and I did that by adding an extra pleat on the sleeve. So I added an extra pleat and I shortened the cuff so that my cuff could be a little bit more close fitting. You'll see on this one, it's a little bit more wider than the other one. The other one, it's a little bit more close fitting, but as I mentioned before, that is the design, and this is how it is straight out of the envelope. The other one, as I mentioned before, is a little bit closer because I brought it in by adding an additional pleat, and I took that pleat in. I think I made an additional 1 inch pleat because each one of those pleats are pleated. It's about a 1 inch pleat, and there are initially 3, and I made a 4th one. And then I reduced the size of the cuff as well. So those are all the modifications and adjustments that I have made to the garment. Not many, because this is a loose silhouette. You don't really have to do much in the way of fitting or anything like that. I didn't even have to do like a forward shoulder adjustment or anything like that. It's a really simple, easy make. I loved it. It's one of my favorite patterns that I have sewn of 2024. My next video, I am going to be doing a list of patterns that I absolutely love and my top like 5 or 6 patterns that I recommend for 2025 based on my experience with those patterns in 2024. So if you love this video and if you liked the pictures, images, and all of the things that you have seen in this video, if you found it entertaining or anything like that, please make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. Thank you all for hanging out with me today. I hope you all have a really happy and blessed 2025. I am starting the new year off really good. Next week is my birthday, and so I'm really, really excited to share with you guys my birthday plans. So stay tuned for that video as well. I will talk to you all in the next video, and I hope you all have a blessed and happy sewing week. Bye.